Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about movies, music, art, and culture. And today is a new special comment about the finale of How I Met Your Mother. I've been watching this show since season 3. I didn't get on board straight away because it reminded me of Friends and I'd never been able to stomach that show. And since then, for 9 seasons, I've watched this show, and I've rewatched this show time and time again. I know some of the classic episodes beat for beat. I've laughed, I've cried, I've cheered, and I've defended this show even in the seasons where I saw it circling the drain, which, namely for me, was season 5, because despite the Zoe arc in season 6, there were moments in that season that had emotional pathos, and goddammit, I bought it. And then we had season 9, the season encapsulating just a few days of Barney and Robin's wedding. And I'll be honest, despite the gimmicky nature of some of the episodes and the reliance on callbacks that become more of a crutch for the show year after year rather than a strength, I was on board. Some of the callbacks felt like the payoff of seasons of buildup, emotional and character arcs that lasted for years and finally met their righteous ending. I'm not gonna lie, there were moments that were absolutely glorious and well-earned, and I even bought into Barney and Robin as a couple, the two who had always been the most deeply broken on the inside, and how they made each other stronger, how they filled those holes as they stayed together. And there were telegraphed moments throughout the season that built to the finale tonight going in. Going in, I had that feeling in my gut that there was tragedy on the horizon. I didn't know if the mother was going to live. I assumed she wasn't. It was pretty obviously telegraphed, but then again, it could have been that Ted could have been dying or dead, and he's retracing the moments of his life that led up to that final climax, and how everything else after that didn't matter as he faced purgatory or heaven or the gates. However, that would have given some real weight to the moment where Ted meets the mother, that high point, that climax of his life, the moment for which we as an audience have all been waiting. And it would have been devilishly charming if it had ended at that perfectly shot moment where he meets her. A quiet moment of anticlimax that would have been goddamn beautiful, and it would have felt earned. The finale, went in a different direction. And I'll say this, on paper, the majority of this episode makes a lot of sense. Friends, even as tightly knit as these have been, they drift apart. If you have kids, you go for weeks or months or years without seeing people. If you've got insane travel schedules, marriages will fracture and splinter, especially when both partners are as driven and as free-spirited as the two in question. And when that happens, people regress until they make stupid decisions and are forced to turn their lives around in specific ways, and spouses die. And eventually, it's believable that you might return to that old flame you've nurtured in the back of your heart year after year after year. From a position of human drama, I buy almost everything that happened in the finale of How I Met Your Mother. On paper. The reason that the finale, in my opinion, does not work, and really does astonishing amounts of damage to the show's many dramatic arcs as a whole throughout multiple seasons, is entirely a matter of tone. And you know, tone's a tricky thing, especially when you're working together with footage cobbled together from years and you've got the finale lodged in your mind almost a decade since that very first episode, since the pilot. And here, the misunderstanding of tone is mind-boggling, because in the writers' minds, it's always been about Ted and Robin. It's the central locus, the primary element since the pilot that really has defined this show. And really, it's never been about the mother. It was the pilot in the minds of the writers when they sat down and when they wrote this finale. It's just a shame they didn't consider all the other elements that they had brought in. All the storied history on this show that's gone on for 9 seasons. It's amazing how much they've forgotten a show that recognizes history and respects its history, and how much they disregarded to create this finale, especially in those final moments. I mean, did they forget the end of season 2 when both Robin and Ted realized they wanted very different things, and how Robin didn't want kids and she wanted to travel and focus on her career long term, which she then did? Did they forget season 7 where Ted confessed to Robin that he loved her, and then a week later she came back from her business trip and said she didn't feel the same, and then she moved out and Ted had to continue on to his process of getting over her? Did they forget the episode Sunrise this season where Ted finally let Robin go? Did they forget End of the Aisle where Robin had second doubts and thought that in the end she might end up with Ted and that Barney wasn't the right choice? Did they forget, I don't know, Barney's arc for the last 3 seasons? Once again, its tone. And on paper, you know what? I can completely accept that Barney and Robin, they wouldn't work out, and that they divorce, and that Barney would backslide and Robin would isolate. On paper, that all makes sense. Then again, that makes sense if you forget the seasons of character development dumped into both characters, where they had every opportunity to turn back as early as season 4 with setback after setback, with the relationship failing and restarting and failing again, and it finally culminating in Barney staying who he is and somehow finding a way to make it work. And then in the course of an hour, a rushed hour, it falls apart. It falls apart in the first 15 minutes. And they had 3 years, and we're all supposed to buy that as a happy time, and that they enjoyed those moments together, and then to finally teach Barney some vestige of responsibility as he backslides. They give him a kid, a child who is a plot device by a nameless woman who is also a plot device, so that Barney can go into the bar after being up all night with a baby and slut shame 2 of the women with whom he would normally have screwed. And you know what? I know the sexual politics of this show have been twisted since the very start in order to justify a character like Barney. But the difference is that it was in the framing. We always got underneath that Barney was sad, desperate, and alone, and Robin was the love that filled that void. But nope, apparently all he needed was that one moment of carelessness that netted him a bouncing baby, and traditional friggin' family values saves the goddamn day. And you know what? I don't blame Neil Patrick Harris for this. He tried. Dear God, he tried to make it work and sell that child as being the one thing for which he's always been searching. A chance to be that father figure that he never had. You know what? I almost bought it. He nearly moved me to tears. He's that good of an actor. But after that scene in the bar, Barney just falls out of the show after a hackneyed moment that I didn't buy for a second. Sure, I get it. Children change your life and how you view the world, even for guys like Barney, especially for guys like Barney. But if Robin didn't change him after so long, do you expect me to believe that plot device baby would really make that much of an impact? And speaking of plot devices, let's talk about the mother. I'd use her name, but let's face it, she's been a plot device for the past 8 seasons, and critics have ranted and raved about that particular issue and how they could never, ever buy into any ending of Ted with her because, well, we haven't seen or been with her character at all, and it would ring hollow and emotionally unjustified. But you know what? I'll give the writers credit. They tried their damnedest to make the mother a character, and the shocking thing was, it worked. Quiet, subtle moments all throughout the 9th season, interweaving with their story that made everyone in the audience wish for more time with her, even when we started to have the aching feeling that she wasn't going to last until the very, very end. She stopped being a plot device and became a character in the way characters like her do, until she wasn't a character anymore. And really, when you go back through that final episode and notice how little the mother says or interacts with the rest of the group as a whole, and how few moments they all spend together, it all starts to ring more than a little hollow. Did we really need as many scenes with Marshall and Lily, with their compelling character arcs having ended with Daisy, and how they've rarely ever been the main focus of the past 2 seasons? I get we need character resolutions, but couldn't we have had a little bit more time with Tracy, that woman that Lily describes as that someone different, the one person who finally settles that bet? And then the mother passed away. And 6 years later, Ted concludes the conversation with his kids, and they, like everyone else, realize that the story, it was never about the mother, because she was just some half-forgotten plot device that was brought up whenever the story needed a prod to keep us engaged in Ted's stream of relationships that now also feel, in retrospect, like meaningless plot devices. Because, like the mother, they never mattered. Sure, there was a moment in the beginning of season 3 where they mentioned the story is less about the mother and less about meeting her and more about everything that Ted had to become, the person he had to be in order to meet her. But if we were to buy that, it would imply that the mother's relationship meant something more. And as much as the show liked to step forward and present that point of view, that's never been remotely true, because it's always been Robin, and we've known her since the pilot. And even by the end of season 1, she was that person Ted could have been with. Why do we have to wait to season 9 where she's desperate enough to go with him? Because in the end, in those final scenes with the kids, Ted is contemplating calling Robin and asking her out. It's been 6 years, and you know, that's believable. It's been 6 years. The kids have adjusted to the idea that they don't mind it. They actually seem distressingly eager for him to do it, actually. And so Ted grabs that blue French horn And Robin looks out the window and sees him and is happy to see him. Because in the end, it's all Ted's story. And Ted has to get that happy ending. And the writers decreed that happy ending belongs with Robin. You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see the next 10 minutes as Robin's life flashes before her eyes as the man who has never stopped loving her and whom she does not love approaches her window. I'd like to see the next hour where he likely comes up to the room and Robin likely agrees to go out with him that one last time, honoring that pact they made at the end of season 2 that if they were both of that age and they were both single, they'd try that one last time. Hell, they'd even get married. I'd like to see the next time at the bar with Lily grudgingly handing the money back to Marshall and the absolutely heartbroken look on Barney's face. I'd like to see the wedding where Marshall would probably have been the best man and Barney probably wouldn't have attended, or if he did, he probably couldn't have looked Ted or Robin in the eye. I would have liked to go a little bit further. I'd like to see 2035, where Robin's career eventually drives them apart again, and now there's kids involved, and Ted is once again alone. The second you think about that, the ending takes a whole different connotation, and the episode that was just sad before becomes heartbreaking. The tonal dissonance between the way they frame that scene and the reality of that scene is enough to break your heart. Or maybe that wouldn't have happened, and true love would have won out, and Ted would get that happy ending because apparently, according to the writers, that's all that apparently matters. You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see Robin open that window, look down at Ted for a long few seconds at his eager eyes as he holds up the blue French horn, and then I'd like to see her shake her head and close the window. Because for as much as this show likes to say it's about some form of real life and real consequences, the excuses that will inevitably be brought forward to defend the plot machinations of this episode, that would have been real. Ted would have likely been walking home or driving home in the rain in that he didn't end up getting everything he wanted. Or you know what, maybe he did. And he had found that woman, and he'd only wish that he could have cherished her more before that end. Maybe he walks into his house and holds his kids with tears streaming down his face. And then he realizes that maybe they were the people he should be working to cherish. The ultimate lesson of the 9 years, of those 9 years of talking, of that long, long conversation was that we need to cherish every moment, and sometimes you don't always get what you want. Now, people would have hated that ending. They would still hate it and would be heartbroken that Ted did not end up finding true happiness. And CBS would be likely fielding hordes of callers for the next year, hell, the next decade. But it would have meant something. It would have had weight. It would have held the rest of the story and its history and its tone. And it would actually mean something beyond a cheap, unearned, happy ending that rings so hollow, it's really all the more sad. It reminds me a lot of Silver Linings Playbook, a movie I absolutely despise, because for the first 2/3 of that movie, it feels real in the portrayal of mental illness that has resonance and weight and actively scorns the idea of giving Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence their happy ending. It actively mocks that idea. And then in the last third, it takes the coward's way out and pairs them up anyway and gives them that Hollywood happy ending, regardless of logic or any sort of common sense. You know what? How I Met Your Mother does the exact same thing in the finale, in terms of tone and the damage that it does to the rest of the season. The rest of the show's entire run, it's staggering. And what mystifies me is that for a show that is so willing to embrace sadness and go for broke in the desperation for true love and the one that has always driven Ted's character, that they feel the need to cheapen it all like this. Even though on a sandy beach on the sunrise of his best friend's wedding, he finally let her go. I get the feeling that the writers knew they had written themselves into a corner with an ending that might have actually had more weight at the end of season 2 instead of now, or maybe in the end of season 4. And I bet at some point the writers' room, they considered the option I put forward. They're smart people. They probably thought of it. And instead, they went halfway and they killed the mother and they took the coward's way out. They didn't close the deal. It's unfinished. It's not, how you say it, legendary. Because sometimes real life that this show puts forward that they want to represent, real life, real consequences, means sometimes you don't get that happy ending. And the fact that that can happen, and the fact you can put that on television, that can mean so much more.